Profound thought number 5. Life. Everyone's military service. I'm very proud of this profound thought. It came to me through Cologne. So at least once she will have been of some use in my life. I never thought I'd be able to say that before I die. From the very start, Cologne and I have been at war because as far as Cologne is concerned, life is a permanent battle where you can only win by destroying the other guy. She cannot feel safe if she hasn't crushed her adversaries and reduced their territory to the meanest share. A world where there's room for other people is a dangerous world, according to her pathetic warmongering criteria. At the same time, she still needs them just a bit for a small but essential chore. Someone, after all, has to recognize her power. So not only does she spend her time trying to crush me by every available means, but on top of it, she would like me to tell her, while her sword is under my chin, that she is the greatest and that I love her. So there are days when she drives me absolutely crazy. As for the frosting on the cake, for some obscure reason, Cologne, who most of the time is totally insensitive to what's going on with other people, has figured out that what I dread more than anything else in life is noise. I think she discovered this by chance. It would never have crossed her mind spontaneously that somebody might actually need silence, that silence helps you to go inward, that anyone who's interested in something more than just life outside actually needs silence. This, I think, is not something Cologne is capable of understanding, because her inner space is as chaotic and noisy as a street outside. But in any case, she figured out that I need silence, and unfortunately, my room is next to hers. So all day long, she makes noise. She shouts into the phone. She puts her music on really loud, and that really gets to me. She slams doors, gives a running commentary on everything she does, including the most fascinating things, like brushing her hair and looking for pencils in the drawer. In short, since she can't invade anything else because I'm totally inaccessible to her on a human level, she invades my personal auditory space and ruins my life from morning to night. You really have to have a pretty impoverished concept of territory to stoop this low. I don't give a damn about where I happen to be, provided nothing stops me from going into my mind. But Cologne won't stop at just ignoring the facts. She converts them into philosophy. My pest of a little sister is an intolerant and depressive little runt who hates other people and would rather live in a cemetery where everyone is dead. Whereas I am outgoing, joyful, and full of life. If there's one thing I detest, it's when people transform their powerlessness or alienation into a creed. With Cologne, I've really lucked out. But for the last few months, Cologne has not merely been content with being the most dreadful sister in the universe. She also has had the poor taste to behave in a way that worries everyone. I really don't need this. A hostile legion of a sister and the spectacle of all her little woes. For the last few months, Cologne has been obsessed with two things: order and cleanliness. The infinitely pleasant consequence? From the zombie that I used to be, I have become a dirty swine. She spends her time shouting at me because I left crumbs in the kitchen or because there was a hair in the shower this morning. Having said that, it's not just me she's after. Everybody is harassed from morning to night because there's mess or crumbs. Her room, which used to be the most incredible shambles, has become clinical. Everything ship-shape, not a speck of dust. Every object has its allotted space. And woe befall Madame Gramond if once she's done the cleaning, she hasn't put things back exactly where they were. It looks like a hospital. In a way, it wouldn't bother me that Cologne has become such a neat freak, but what I cannot stand is that she goes on acting as if she's really laid back. There's a problem here somewhere, but everyone pretends they haven't noticed, and Cologne goes on claiming to be the only one of the two of us to take life as an Epicurean. I assure you, however, that there is nothing the least bit Epicurean about taking 3 showers a day and shouting like a lunatic because the lamp on your night table has moved 2 inches. What is Colombe's problem? I really don't know. Perhaps all this wanting to crush everyone has turned her into a soldier. Quite literally. She wants everything just so. She scrubs and cleans as though she's in the army. Soldiers are obsessive about order and cleanliness. That is a well-known fact. For Colombe, cleanliness is a necessity, a way of combating chaos, of holding at bay the filth of war and all those little shreds of human being it leaves behind. But in fact, I wonder if Colombe is not the extreme case that reveals the norm. Don't we all deal with life the way we do our military service? Doing what we can while we wait either to be demobbed or do battle. Some will clean up the barrack room, others will shirk or spend their time playing cards, or trafficking or plotting something. Officers command, soldiers obey, but no one's fooled by this comedy behind closed doors. One day you'll have to go out and die. Officers and soldiers alike. The morons along with the wise guys who smuggle toilet paper or deal in cigarettes on the black market. While I'm at it, let me give you the basic shrinks hypothesis. Colombe is so full of chaos inside, so empty and cluttered at the same time, that she is trying to create some order in herself by tidying up and cleaning her inner space. Very funny, right? I figured out a long time ago that shrinks are comedians who believe that metaphors are something for great wise men. In fact, any 6th grader can come up with that one. But you should hear the scornful way Maman's friends who are shrinks laugh at the least little pun. And you should hear the absolutely idiotic things Maman tells us too, because she tells everyone everything about her own sessions at the shrinks, as if she'd been to Disneyland. The family life show, the My Life with My Mother Hall of Mirrors, the My Life Without My Mother roller coaster, the My Sexual Life Chamber of Horrors. Here she lowers her voice so I won't hear. And in the end, for the tunnel of death, my life as a premenopausal woman. But what freaks me out about Colombe is that I often get the impression that she doesn't feel anything. Whenever she has to display some emotion, it is such an act, so fake, that I wonder if she's feeling anything at all. Yes, sometimes that scares me. Maybe she's completely sick. Maybe she's trying at any cost to feel something authentic. Maybe she's going to commit some totally insane act. I can see the headline from here. Nero of the Rue de Grenelle. Young woman sets fire to family apartment. Questioned on the motive for her act, she replied, "I wanted to feel an emotion." Right, I know, I'm exaggerating a little. And I'm hardly the one to be denouncing pyromania. But still, when I hear her shouting her head off this morning because there was a cat hair on her green coat, I thought to myself, poor fool, the battle's lost before it's begun. You'd feel better if only you knew that. "11. The rebellion of the Mongolian tribes. There's a quiet knock on the door of the lodge. It's Manuela. She's just been given the rest of the day off. The maître is dying, she says. I cannot tell whether she means to add a touch of irony to this echo of Chabrot's refrain. You aren't busy? We would have our tea now? Manuela's casual disregard for synchronizing verb tenses, the way she uses a conditional interrogative without the proper word order, the way she can make free with her syntax because she's only a poor Portuguese woman forced into the language of exile, all having the same air of obsolescence about them as Chabrot's strict formulas. I met Laura in the stairs, she says, as she sits down. She was holding onto the banister as if she needed to go to the toilet. When she saw me, she left. Laura is a younger Arthur's daughter, a nice girl who doesn't get many visits. Clemence, her older sister, is an awkward incarnation of frustration. a devout churchgoer who spends her time boring her husband and children with endless mind-numbing days of holy mass, parish fetes, and cross-stitch embroidery. But Jean, the youngest, is a drug addict, a sad wreck. He was a lovely child once, with wide eyes filled with wonder, who would trot along behind his father, as if his life depended on it. But when he started using drugs, the change was spectacular. He ceased to move. After a childhood wasted running after God in vain, he now seems to be tripping over his own legs, moving along in fits and starts, stopping on stairs or outside the elevator or in the courtyard for increasingly lengthy spells, to the point of occasionally falling asleep on my doormat or in the garbage can room. One day, he was stationed in a studied stupor above the bed of roses and dwarf camellias. So I asked him if he needed anything, and it occurred to me that he was beginning to look more and more like Neptune, with his tearful eyes, his damp, twitching nose, and his scruffy, curly hair straying across his temples. No, he had replied, his words as detached and halting as his gestures. Wouldn't you at least like to sit down? I suggested. Sit down? He echoed, astonished. No. What for? To rest a bit. I see. Well, no. I left him to the company of the camellias and kept an eye on him from the window. After a very long time, he roused himself from his floral contemplation and headed at a snail's pace for my lodge. I opened before he foundered in his endeavor to ring the bell. I'll be on my way, he said, without seeing me, his silky, unkempt locks flopping down over his eyes. Then, with what seemed an enormous effort, those flowers, what are they called? The camellias? I asked, surprised. Camellias, he echoed, slowly. Camellias. Well, thank you, Madame Macal, he said eventually, his voice astonishingly firm. And he turned on his heels. I did not see him again for weeks until one morning in November when, as he was passing by my lodge, I scarcely recognized him, so great was his fall. Yes, a fall. We're all headed for one. But for a young man to reach that point before his time, the point where he cannot get to his feet again, such a fall is so visible and so brutal that your heart is seized with pity. Jean Arthens was no more than a tortured body, staggering through life on a razor's edge. Horrified, I was wondering how he would even manage to make the simple gestures required to operate the elevator, when Bernard Grelier suddenly appeared, took hold of him, and lifted him up as if he were a feather, and I was spared having to intervene. I had a brief glimpse of a frail, mature man carrying a ravaged child in his arms. Then they disappeared into the dark stairway. But Clemence will be coming, said Manuela, who uncannily always picks up the thread of my unspoken thoughts. Chabrot told me to ask her to leave, I said, thoughtful. He won't see anyone but Paul. The Baroness was so upset she was blowing her nose into a dishcloth, added Manuela, referring to Violet Grelier. I'm not surprised. Truth will out when the end is near. Violet Grelier is to dishcloths what Pierre Arthens is to silk. We are all prisoners of our own destiny, must confront it with the knowledge that there is no way out, and in our epilogue must be the person we have always been deep inside, regardless of any illusions we may have nurtured in our lifetime. Just because you've been around fine linen does not mean you're entitled to it, no more than a sick person is to health. I pour the tea and we sip in silence. We have never had our tea together in the morning, and this break with our usual protocol imbues the ritual with a strange flavor. Yes, this sudden transmutation in the order of things seems to enhance our pleasure. as if consecrating the unchanging nature of a ritual established over our afternoons together, a ritual that has ripened into solid and meaningful reality. Today, because it has been transgressed, our ritual suddenly acquires all its power. We are tasting the splendid gift of this unexpected morning, as if it was some precious nectar. Ordinary gestures have an extraordinary resonance as we breathe in the fragrance of the tea, savor it, lower our cups, serve more, and sip again. Every gesture has a bright aura of rebirth. At moments like this, the web of life is revealed by the power of ritual, and each time we renew our ceremony, the pleasure will be all the greater for our having violated one of its principles. Moments like this act as magical interludes, placing our hearts at the edge of our souls. Fleetingly, yet intensely, a fragment of eternity has come to enrich time. Elsewhere, the world may be blustering or sleeping. Wars are fought, people live and die. Some nations disintegrate while others are born, soon to be swallowed up in turn. And in all this sound and fury, amidst eruptions and undertows, while the world goes its merry way, bursts into flames, tears itself apart, and is reborn, human life continues to throb. So, let us drink a cup of tea. Kakuzo Okakura, the author of the Book of Tea, laments the rebellion of the Mongolian tribes in the 13th century, not because it brought death and desolation, but because it destroyed one of the creations of the Song dynasty, the most precious among them, the art of tea. Like Okakura, I know that tea is no minor beverage. When tea becomes ritual, it takes its place at the heart of our ability to see greatness in small things. Where is beauty to be found? In great things that, like everything else, are doomed to die, or in small things that aspire to nothing, yet know how to set a jewel of infinity in a single moment. The tea ritual, such a precious repetition of the same gestures and the same tastes, a session to simple, authentic, and refined sensations, a license given to all at little cost, to become aristocrats of taste because tea is the beverage of the wealthy and of the poor. The tea ritual, therefore, has the extraordinary virtue of introducing into the absurdity of our lives an aperture of serene harmony. Yes, the world may aspire to vacuousness. Lost souls mourn beauty. Insignificance surrounds us. Then let us drink a cup of tea. Silence descends. One hears a wind outside. Autumn leaves rustle and take flight. The cat sleeps in a warm pool of light. And with each swallow, time is sublimed.